But for listeners who haven't read your book yet, tell us what you write.
I write rural romance for Penguin. I also write category romances for Mills and Boon. But the rural romances that I write for Penguin usually involve a contemporary story and a historical story interwoven. The historical story is often set in World War II.
Oh wow, interesting. Okay. Where do the ideas for the book come from?
Everywhere. Sometimes the World War II stories come from research. You know, I've just become fascinated with a particular aspect of history. I wrote a book called Moonlight Plains about World War II in Townsville because I lived in Townsville for many years, and I'd spoken to a lot of people who lived in Townsville through the war. Other times, the moment I'm writing a book about World War II in Shanghai and the years just before that. And I knew very little about it before I started, so I looked for something a bit glamorous at times.
Yeah, Shanghai would be very glamorous, particularly during the war.
Yeah.
I mean, before the war. When did you know that you wanted to be a writer, and what were your steps to get you there?
Well, you know, I think I've always wanted to be a writer. Even before I knew how to write, I used to draw pictures for my sisters and pass them through the slats of orange boxes and make them watch movies that I'd made up. I joined the Brownies when I was a child, and the first thing I wanted to do was the writer's badge.
Oh.
And that story was actually about a girl whose family moves from the city to the outback. And I'm still writing that story. So it's almost like that's my core story. School English was always my best subject. I wanted to be a journalist, but my dad said it's not a very nice career for a young lady.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is back in the 60s. I wasn't a rebellious child, so I became an English teacher instead.
Dads can have a lot of influence, can't they? So you're not from the outback yourself, even though you write rural romance. Okay, so obviously that part of your writing of that is research.
Yes.
Yeah. I have another set question, but we can deviate a little bit every now and then. How did you go about getting published in the first instance?
I was teaching a unit of popular fiction at Townsville Grammar to Year 11 students. We had to look at romance, detective fiction, action, adventure, and we were actually being very clever and analytical and saying how stereotyped they were and, you know, predictable and all this sort of thing. But at the same time, I'm thinking, I really like these romances. I'd never read a Mills and Boon before, but I could see they had a lot of the qualities that I'd enjoyed as in my childhood reading, in the Little Women and Daddy Longlegs and, you know, all those sorts of classic girl stories. They all had a romance in them. And so in my holidays, I started writing. My first effort was rejected. My next 3 efforts were rejected, but eventually I was becoming more and more determined, and eventually I had one accepted for publication.
Lovely. So I'm going to jump to one of these